Okay, we have already 43 participants, and I welcome all of you. And I think you overheard me and Muttaki talking about some of the stuff CLT does. And thank you so much for the compliments, Muttaki. He's joining us from London, and there are a lot of us right here. We are now into our third module, and the third module is a very powerful one being conducted by an equally powerful expert. But before I come to that, I would first like to invite Suleiman to set the netiquette as always, so that if somebody is new, they know what is happening, and then we'll move on with the program. Thank you, Suleiman.
Good afternoon. Just to mention few things before the start of this session, you are requested to keep your Zoom profiles updated by mentioning your full names in your Zoom account. That will be easy for us to issue the certificates to you then. If your internet connection is not good, you are requested to keep your video turned off. We will keep you all mute, but if you have a question to us, do mention it in the chat and we will answer your questions. We are also going to record this session and it will be uploaded on YouTube. Thank you.
And just to add that we have had over 100 and I think 21 registrations, the highest so far for this webinar. And our Zoom account can only take 100. So we do not know what happens if, and this is primarily for our university faculty, but we haven't stopped some college faculty, some staff that want to join from a campus. And there are, I think every session, there are a few people also from outside FCC. And we don't stop, I mean, we allow and welcome everybody. But today, if it goes beyond 100, we will have to worry about our FCC university faculty because they are our primary focus. Just very quickly to say that most of you probably know, if you have been with us, that these are a continuous string of modules actually, not just the webinars that we have planned for summer. These modules have two components, and you are requested to send us a feedback form on the topic under discussion so that we can tailor make it according to your requirements. Now, having said that, though 99 of university faculty registered, and we only are considering university faculty responses, only 17 of you have responded, and in your comments actually make us more positive about the agenda that we have today. Suleiman, will you put the agenda up? And as you can see, the agenda does talk about, you have asked about formative and summative assessment. You have asked about how assessment strategies and learning outcomes have been to be linked. You have also asked about rubrics, and I think rubrics will be explained. And you have talked about fair assessments. A lot of you actually worry about how to prevent cheating and plagiarism by your students. And I think that's a fair comment. We are sort of working now on the understanding that we give our students a benefit of doubt in the way we are working. And like I said yesterday, this is not online teaching per se. We are teaching as remote instructors with the hope that we'll go back to the face-to-face traditional mode as before, albeit with some differences to our teaching. We will be more innovative in mixing up technology. Before I go on to, introducing our expert for today, Mavish, I would like to first start with a brief introduction of how assessment fits into your course design. And I will share the screen for a short while to just make that connection. Please allow me a second. And this is just to ensure that we are all on the same page regarding the bigger picture of what we are trying to do in remote instructions to develop your skills in remote instructions. So where does, I discussed that yesterday, perhaps some of you that didn't come. So assessments is, as we talked yesterday also, that there are some elements, basic elements of a course design, in which feedback assessment, learning activities, learning goals, and precondition is a very clear, in-depth situational analysis. And that situational analysis at this point in time has made it clear that the modality is the biggest consideration and the way it affects the learner and the teacher and the context. So DFINC that we promote talks very simply about that. First of all, you do an in-depth situational analysis, and then the most powerful component of the course design is your learning goals, but we define them as learning outcomes of students. And no matter what taxonomy you use, Bloom or DFINC, you define those learning outcomes so that you are sure that what you want is intended learning is happening. And to see that if your learning is happening, the step that ties very strongly with the outcomes is assessments. And that is why these two formulate the most powerful combination to bring about very powerful learning. Only once you have defined and delineated your assessments, you will then formulate activities in keeping with the assessment mode. And therefore, I just very quickly take you to a table which, let me see where it is. There we go. Sorry. Share, sorry. New share. Worksheet. Can you see it? I am unable to open that. Is it open now in your windows?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Yeah, okay. So if
Yes,
you see the worksheet, I very want to tell you that this is a template to help to align your course elements, and then you can make your course plan according to your design or syllabus that you do. And here you see we have actually put up links to tell you how to make quality learning outcomes. After successful completion, the student will be able to 1, 2, 3, 4. Here you have to, we have put up links to your resources up front that you would like to assess to ensure that these learning outcomes are achieved. This column could be anywhere, this column could be to the far end, but then with the learning outcomes comes your assessments. And here we have given some links, you know, here you can see is replacing traditional modalities, and we will not open it right now. And there is a learning activities. And then there are some free web-based technologies that we have also linked, and I'm opening it for your viewing. Can you see it?
Yes.
Suleiman?
It's visible.
So we have actually put up lots of tools in keeping with the task that you need and modality that you want to. And these are lots of tools that you can use for your students. So this is a basic alignment worksheet. And you know that we did how to make, construct good SLOs yesterday. And today you're going to link outcomes with assessments. And I'm going back now to, I'm stopping the sharing of the screen and coming back to you. So here I invite Mehwish Raza. She is the Dean of Education at Forman Christian College. And she has also worked as a teacher trainer at Beacon House School System. And she went to Austria. And don't ask me, Mehwish, to again pronounce that name. So you're going to do that. It's apparently a pedagogical institute, that much I could make out. And so you are new at FCC and one of the remarkable additions, and we're very proud to welcome you to this forum. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rukhsana. I hope everyone can hear me well. Today, I'm talking about alternate strategies of assessment in remote teaching and learning. So firstly, thank you, CLT and Dr. Rukhsana, for especially for introducing me with such kind words. Thank you. I received participants' reflections on pre-webinar feedback. So picking up on that, I think hopefully today's webinar is going to cover a wide range of your concerns, the concepts which are related to assessment in remote setting. So I would begin with sharing my screen, and I hope you all can see it.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, so we have the first agenda item. We will begin with understanding assessment in remote setting, talk about the overarching types of assessments. Building on to this, I'm going to talk about exploring different remote assessment strategies, along with exploring different assessment items within the broader categories of assessment. We'll talk about rubrics, and you will be engaged in planning and evaluating rubrics. At this point, you will be segregated into subgroups. You'll be working on your own. I have already randomly selected group leaders from each group and have sent a resource file to them. I hope you all have received it, the ones to whom I sent this email to. My fourth agenda item would be to discuss the efficiency, fairness, and transparency in assessment. And lastly, we are going to have a discussion on assessment issues in remote setting. So, just a second, please. So technology integrated assessment. The big question is how to make important decisions about choosing the most relevant type of assessment for your subject. See, assessment is a key tool in the learning and teaching process. It helps both students as well as us as instructors to evaluate where we are, where do we want the students to reach, and how is the journey going on, and how much concepts have students actually grasped while we were presenting the course material to them. But one of the major challenges for teachers is to choose appropriate assessment techniques. A good place for us to begin, as Rukhsana has also talked about coursework planning and all. The backward design approach that we follow at Former Christian College. As instructors, we all should ask ourselves, what do we want the students to know and to be able to do during the assessment? This defines our learning objective. How do we determine what is acceptable? How do we make it more meaningful? How can we contextualize it? Now that we are teaching in the remote setting, students are not there. It is not the conventional teaching that is happening. We are not geographically present in the same place. So how can we make it more meaningful for them, more relevant to their needs, and how can we contextualize it? One of the big issues in online assessments or remote assessments is of cheating, of unethical research. So half of the times this problem can be addressed only by contextualizing the assessment, only by adding a few relevant phrases to your question where you relate everything to students' own experiences. Just by adding in your own context, define this, or based on the previous learning, how have you made meaning out of it? So it's more or less the way you phrase the question. So half the times the problem of cheating can be addressed through this strategy when you make research ethical. But that really, the questions that you have to ask yourselves determine the acceptable evidence of learning that define your approach. Thirdly, you have to select the content. How can you incorporate knowledge creation? Knowledge creation is very important. And then comes the last part, where you're planning the activities. What kind of activities? Are you looking for synchronous activities or asynchronous activities? And should you conduct to prepare students to demonstrate understanding? What is actually your perception towards successful learning? You have to be very clear in your own minds as instructors, that what do you want students to showcase when you're assessing them. Now, the two types of assessments that we are all familiar with, formative and summative, they come into play for any kind of instruction, be it conventional or in remote setting. Both type of these assessments are necessary for a wholesome assessment of learning, and a proper balance between these two is likely to assure or to maximize students' learning in any context. Again, I would say, irrespective of the modality of teaching, a good balance between both these types of assessment ensures you to, that you have a wholesome assessment of students. Within these assessment types, we plan questions. I'm not going into explaining what is formative assessment and summative assessment, because I feel that we all are aware of this. So moving on, types of items. I'm going to refer to the word question as items. There are two types of items that we select to assess students. One is selected response items, and the other is constructed response items. They both bring their advantages and downsides. Now, the selected response items are restricted to a set of words. Usually when we are, the item format is basically, it is one word reply, or it doesn't really, require students to be creative. So these are called as selected response items. The responses are given by the instructor. There are advantages of this type of assessment as well. One of the most important of which is the ability to test a wide range of material in a very less time compared to the constructed or the constructive response items. But the downside to selected response items are that they do not promote higher order thinking skills. When we are planning the assessment, it is very important to be mindful of the content that we are planning to assess. If, as instructors, our focus is always going to remain on recall and comprehension, then how are we extending students' learning ability, and how are we using assessment as a tool for learning? This is also very important consideration. Whereas when we're talking about constructed response items, students are encouraged to think. There could be reflective questions. Such questions stir up the higher order thinking skills, where students are engaged in knowledge creation, reproducing their understanding towards different concepts, and to report what have they learned. So it's essential. Basically, constructed response items assess a complex and a wide range of ability level. So it's essential to assess students' complex skill set as well as to assess their basic skill set as well. Now, the response time for the constructed response items, it tends to be time consuming. Also, the feedback giving and the assessment itself can be time consuming. But we are going to talk about the remedies and strategies. How can we overcome such issues? In remote learning setting, Most of the times when we are talking about fairness in assessment, and when we talk about transparency in assessment, usually around the world, people support constructed response items. Why? Because they still provide the students an opportunity to contextualize their responses and minimize the risk of copying, pasting, and taking information from elsewhere. Now, talking about the online modalities, for the structured response items, there are quite many. This is the short form for structured response tests. When you want to create a liaison with the technology, there is so much that you can do in terms of structured response items. These are some forums, some web-based applications which you can use as instructors to assess students' learning while following the structured response item type. Some of these are game-based apps. Another very important twist that you can bring to your to this modality is to involve students in developing the quiz questions. You see, when students are engaged in developing the quiz questions, the time that they spend in conceiving and writing the questions is a time spent well in basically extending their understanding of the subject matter. It's a kind of involvement that enhances their understanding of the same concept that you're teaching them, and it also increases their motivation and their commitment towards assessment. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about 6 different types of constructed response assessments. The first one we all are familiar with. We have been practicing it. Most of us have been practicing it in the previous semester. Take home or open book exam, which is not proctored. It basically presents instructions and attachments or relevant resources, and students are they submit their work by uploading through assignment tools or through an LMS. It allows students to refer to the class notes, the teacher's talk, or textbooks, or any other approved material which the teacher or the instructor has used for teaching. Another advantage of take-home or open book exams is that it assesses complex skills. Teachers may phrase the questions in a way that necessarily requires students to answer in more critical and analytical way. Again, I would say you can overcome the risk of cheating or plagiarism by adding a short phrase to your question that explain it or write it in your own context, or link it with our classroom discussions. Something that enables or that restricts students to go back to the original instruction that they have received from you. Lastly, it promotes ethical research. Only if a suitable criteria and a success criteria has been given out to the students before engaging in such kind of assessment. The second kind of constructed response assessment is proctored exam. Now, this is necessarily, it has to be done through an online portal. These are timed. Please remember that all of this information is relevant and only applied to the remote learning setting. So proctored exam, of course, it happens in the conventional setting as well, but right now I'm talking from the point of view of e-learning. So such type of exams are timed. They are, students are monitored by automated proctoring tools. You can try using speedexam.net. They have a free plan, or as individual instructors, you can create your account, and you're allowed to have to take 50 exams per month. Now, all these 50 exams, every time you upload an exam, it will be accounted for one submission. So be it a quiz or anything, you upload a file, or you just upload an exam, so it will account for one exam. Up to 5,000 questions, you can basically in your free account, you can try this out, and the free account offers you to add up to 5,000 questions. You'd be offered with exam monitoring system. The computer is going to raise a red flag if there is some suspicious activity going on the same system as the student is taking the exam from. Now, this is a downside. You see, the downside is that sometimes when students are so committed to cheating, they do find a way. So if they're using one laptop to take a proctored exam, online examination, there are so many other ways through which they can actually, indulge in unethical act of cheating. So, and sometimes in the case of power cutouts, again, you have a pause or a stop gap for monitoring. So we have to be careful, and we have to be specifically mindful of our own context, the infrastructure, the kind of infrastructure, and the kind of facilities that we have here in Pakistan. You can also hold group-based exams, and you can have unlimited groups made on this forum. So this is one suggestion for proctored examination. Then we are familiar with presentations and poster presentations. Presentations can be both synchronous or asynchronous. When we're talking about synchronous presentations, could be on Google Slides or even within the Zoom sessions of your classes. Or Prezi, you can try this out. It's quite a fun application. And asynchronous is the conventional MS Office tools, the PowerPoint presentation. Now, for poster presentation, it requires, research asserts that poster presentations require in-depth discussion compared to just the normal visual infographic presentation. So a poster presentation could be synchronous as well as asynchronous. If you're going into asynchronous, it can be integrated within the LMS that you're teaching from, such as Moodle in the form of images. And if you're looking at the synchronous mode, then there are these online softwares, PictoChart, or you can integrate it within your Zoom meetings. Project artifacts. Now, this is very interesting and very relevant to rigorous semester teaching. For example, like very similar to our summer semester. It's a rigorous teaching semester. So instead of packing it up with assessment, I suggest that instructors should look at a wholesome assessment that is displayed in the form of digital exhibition, or it basically it provides a selection of students' achievements and student products that have been realized over a period of time. It can include a wide range and a variety of student products, audio recordings, video demonstrations, some digital models, of course, combined with the written narrative product. Students can work together in groups, and also you can actually ask students to explore their OneDrive options for collating different evidences from their academic achievement. Lastly, annotated anthology or bibliography. Instead of asking students to every time write a 1,500 word long assignment, another way of making them go through all of that process, all of that reading, is to just ask them to submit an annotated bibliography. This is also something that works, and it offers students a choice of selection of work. You can actually guide them and have a guideline for them that they shouldn't read material which is more than 5 years old or 8 years old, especially in context of social sciences. Of course, in context of true sciences or lab works, some theories, they date back, and nothing can replace those. Of course, we understand that. Now, Another challenge, one challenge that I would like to talk about when I'm talking about constructed response assessment is scoring and feedback of such assessments. Now, there are two basic approaches to scoring. One is holistic and the other is analytical. Both of these are based on a set of guidelines which are called rubrics. Holistic scoring usually contains statements which describes the characteristics of student work which the teachers anticipate. Now, because this is an assessment of complex skills, so you have to eliminate the element of subjectivity. Something that is good for me might not be good for you, or something that meets expectations for me might not meet expectations for you, or for that matter, another colleague who's teaching the same subject as you are. So how do we eradicate this element of subjectivity? We do that by exactly defining it to the students that what are we expecting? What do we call good as instructors? As an instructor, what do I anticipate from my students? What is a good quality student product in my point of view? The student has to be given out a complete detail of expectation, and that is called as a rubric. And this connects us to the next segment of this webinar. You see, if there are no degrees of success or failure, then how are students moving ahead towards excellence? So for rubrics, I would say to give you an overview, rubric articulates the expectations of an assignment by listing the criteria or what counts for you as an instructor. And it describes the level of quality from excellent to poor. Now, how do we do that? How do we do that? If today I have to devise a set of rubrics, how should I do that? Where should I begin from? The first step is to think of an assignment that you'd like to create the rubric for. Second is to imagine what is high, medium, and low level of responses that you can receive as an instructor. Of course, recall from your previous experiences. At this point, if you have students' work exemplars, that would be ideal. But as instructors, we do have certain anticipation that, these are the probable mistakes that students may make. And this is how we are going to assess them. So all of those mistakes, you list them down. And after listing down the mistakes, turn those mistakes into positive attributes. What do you want to see? How can students overcome making those mistakes? And what is use as many nouns as you can to make it more descriptive and to explain what do you want from the students. Last step is to now calibrate each level, where it can be exceeds, meets, does not meet expectations. It can be excellent, fair, or poor. It depends how do you want to label the level of performance. You can use students' work exemplars to determine the different levels. Something that you have seen earlier will help you in writing down the rubrics. Now this brings us to the group task. You will be creating rubrics. We have, based on the information, the preliminary information that we received from your registration, we have already segregated you into groups. I've tried to keep you together with your colleagues so that there is no conflict of subject matter. There is no conflict in understanding of the content. Anyways, if someone is not being paired with or grouped with your own colleagues, then we have tried to keep it so that you're paired or you're grouped with the nearest possible match for your subject. you'll be, after I finish giving you the instructions, you will be automatically split into subgroups. You will stay in the subgroup only for 30 minutes. So you please plan your time wisely while you're in the group. Each group has a group leader. You have been randomly selected as the group leaders. So your role, the group leader's role, is to keep everyone focused and to accomplish the task in the given time frame. In the first 5 minutes, all members should give out their email IDs in the chat window to the group leader, because I have sent a pre-prepared file to the group leaders, and the group leader is going to work around, you all are going to, actually all the group members are going to collaboratively work on this file to write rubrics. Only two standards of, only two criteria and 3 levels of performance. But anyways, half an hour is all the time that you have. So the group leaders are going to, and I'm sure many of you must have already uploaded this file on Google Drive, as I wrote in my email to you, which was sent earlier today. You're going to select one topic from your own subject area and plan a constructed response assessment. We have talked about different types of constructed response assessments. So choose any one, whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever you have a consensus on. You will write rubrics with a special focus on a level of cognitive engagement, which will be allocated to your group in the subgroups. And the step 4 is that you will upload the product on Padlet. I will be sending the link to your subgroup. Once you'll be split into groups, you will receive a link. And at the end of this task, you would have to upload this file on the Padlet. This file will be seen by everyone. Your work product will be seen and viewed by everyone. And I'm going to give out a rubric for, of course, to all of you when you will reach to the point of evaluation. So Suleiman, can you please split the main room into subgroups?
Okay, Mavish, so the breakout rooms went well?
Yes, I merged all of them, so everyone is returning to the main room now.
Okay, great. Already I see 61 participants. Welcome back. And for many, do ask Mavish, I think for many of them it was a first time experience. So it was a good starting point for many to know that they can do it in their classes. It's a great activity.
I hope they've learned something from this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, so I hope that everyone can see my screen once more. I have this file here in front of me, the one that I sent to you all, the planning file. Roxana, this is what they had been working on. Basically, they had to write down the subject. The learning goal meant that they think about what do they want students to learn and achieve at the end of the assessment. So few things that have to be taken on from this activity. We always should plan a learning goal for an assessment. Assessment is not taken only for the sake of assessing students and for the sake of consolidating a final grade and for collecting evidences to justify that final score, but it is basically conducted to assess students on their learning. Now, what is it? What do we want the students to learn, and what do we want to assess? That's one thing. Then the assignment description basically required the participants to write down what are the deliverables that students, or what do they want the students to do. Based on that, they had to pick out 2 standards. And any 2 standards, I had this conversation with within many of the breakout rooms where people, some groups, they preferred to just keep it open. Some preferred to align it with one of the hierarchy levels within the Bloom's taxonomy. So basically, but as an instructor, I would suggest that that all instructors should be mindful of these standards. That what are the standards of performance that you're looking at? And within these standards, how do you define exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, progressing, and not there yet? And lastly, group members had to write down their own the names of the group members. So this is what they had been working on. Now, just give me a minute. Resuming the training presentation and the talk. I'm going to take your feedback. I know I have some feedback from everyone about this this activity. Now, time for peer evaluation. But I'm going to modify this a little bit because still few groups have not uploaded their the link that they have worked in the Google shared file. Unfortunately, many group leaders who were already, handpicked randomly, they didn't show up, and neither did they inform us so that we could send out the relevant resources to someone else within their group. Apologies for that. So at this stage, I have changed the way forward for this webinar a little bit. Instead of taking you or giving you time right now to go and observe and evaluate your peers' work product. You have the link for the Padlet. You can view this product or the products which have been uploaded there at your own ease, and we can take it up on a discussion forum. Maybe we continue the discussion on the Padlet, where you can give your opinion on different groups' work. The groups have been wise enough to give their number, and also you can see the members of the groups, the subject, the assignment, everything is there. Where once you click on the link for the Google Docs file. All the group leaders who have uploaded their work, please make sure that your file should have public viewership rights, because participants may try to access that file from their personal email IDs, or maybe the IDs which are not, you have not allowed viewership from wider audience. So please do change the privacy settings. But anyways, few things that we need to consider while we are writing the rubrics. Clarity of criteria, of course. Each criteria should be listed out as clearly as possible, because the entire ambition is to minimize the element of subjectivity and to bring students on the same level of understanding as we have. Then clarity of expectation, guidance to the learners. We need to be mindful of the fact that rubrics is basically a set of guidelines. It articulates expectations for students by listing out a criteria of the work and the performance that we as teachers anticipate from them. So by doing this, of course, you're going to increase the reliability of scoring. Reliability of scoring means that if at any given point in time, if you have to assess the student's work, on another day, the score is likely to be, it's likely to be internally consistent. This notion comes up when we eliminate the element of subjectivity, when the assessment is planned and it is communicated to the students in a way that it reinforces everybody's understanding towards the mutual concept of success. The rubrics should support metacognition. Your rubrics should enable the learners to realize what are they doing, to reflect on their learning. Once when you have the rubrics out and you discuss it with the students should be able to identify the exact skills and knowledge that they would be taking from that very particular assessment. this was where you had to evaluate your peers' work, but the link to the Padlet, this entire presentation will be uploaded on our portal where you can access it. And all of you have the link to the Padlet. You can log on later on and view each other's work and give comments and, just make your own notes if you'd like to take help from someone's work. Now, rubrics and feedback also go hand in hand. Now, after doing this activity, I'm sure you all must have realized that whatever the long statements, the standards that you have written down, this is the exact feedback that you would be giving to the students in case they have performed well and in case they haven't performed well. What happens when we are giving students some constructed response assignments? They usually, feedback takes a lot of time, giving them feedback, and giving feedback is equally important. If you're assessing students and not providing a constructive feedback, then you're basically not giving them an opportunity to develop the skill set or to move towards the improved level of performance. So this guideline has to come from the teacher. And in case of constructed response items, this can become a challenge for the instructors. For example, I'll speak from my own experience. Last semester, I was teaching 120 students. So 120 students mean that if you're giving out an assignment or the final, the assignment that determines the grade, which requires students to write about 2,000 to 2,500 words. So you're checking it as well. You're reading through everything. And then if you're giving out a unique feedback, rewriting the feedback for 120 students, it may become very laborious, and may take a lot of time. But when you have a set of rubrics there, you have established the expectation. And now when you're assessing the students, it's fair enough to tell them that they have not fulfilled these criteria or they haven't, showcased these certain standards in their work, and therefore their grade is so and so. So you justify yourself. And it saves the instructors from getting into an argument with students or bringing that kind of a situation where students show disagreement with the assigned grade. And this brings me to the point where I tell you that just after I finish this webinar, I'm going to go online and will see your work product, and I will post my comments for each and every one of you. So please go back to your work in the late evening today or early morning tomorrow to read my feedback on your work. It also enables teachers to define a way forward for their teaching. Thank you. Brings me to the end of this session. Thank you so much. You have my email address. If in case you need help, you want to ask something, please do that. While I was working on this webinar, I was preparing for it, I stumbled upon some really good resources, which I'm going to share with Rukhsana, and perhaps Rukhsana, you can look at those and add those to your resource bank. Now the floor is open for discussion to discuss issues in assessment. Rukhsana, you're muted.
Unmuted, and I think
yes.
Thank you so much, Mahwish. I think that was a very comprehensive talk on assessments, and though you covered all the issues that our feedback form indicated. I see that a lot of faculty had their first time experience in breakout rooms, and it will help them a lot in their work. But I think, like you said, this is a time for questions. So please we request the faculty, number one, two things. If your internet connection can hold the bandwidth, please do open up we would love to see you if you are comfortable with that. And do talk yourself, I mean, about your comments or your questions. And it will be a great experience to sort of even socially connect apart from the queries that you have. So please, you're most welcome to join in, and I'll then make a few ending, remarks about a couple of things before we sign off.
Hello, Dr. Rukhsana. Am I allowed to speak?
Oh, please
Good
allow people more. You are the ones who should be speaking. Please do.
This was a really great session, and it reminds me, recently I have attended a course on developing rubrics. It was funded by USFEP, and it was an online course.
Oh,
so it was great, but I think as teachers, we need more training in developing rubrics. So if we can have a few more sessions on how to develop good, and by good, I would like to quantify it in measurable terms. Like we need to quantify it in measurable terms, say good, excellent, that something which might be excellent for us might not be excellent for a student. Something which is excellent for a student, it might not look excellent to us. So we need to learn how to develop rubrics in quantifiable terms. And thank you. That's all from my side.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kurutulan. Thank you.
Roxana, I would like to take a minute to make a comment on what you said.
Please.
Kurutulan, thank you so much for your feedback. I personally feel that you can never have a standardized definition of good, better, best. It is always grounded in our context, in the background where we come from, in our situation. Something that is best for the world out there might not be applicable. It all depends on who we are, what has been our journey. So as instructors, you understand that what have you taught? Rubrics sprout out from your own teaching. What have you taught to the students? What have the expectations that you have established, the skill set that you have trained them on to demonstrate that? All of these things inform the rubrics. And this is where good, struggling, or poor, it all comes from here. Having said that, this is such a dynamic concept that it changes. And again, one size doesn't fit all. So taking on from that, I would say that we need to start looking at assessments from within our own context. And we need to start looking at assessments in the remote setting, things that apply well to the subject matter, to our skill set, the things that we can handle well, and assessment targets that can extend or enhance students' learning. These are the three things, core things that, in my opinion, they matter a lot. Someone asked me, Dr. Waqar Azim in the chat asked me that if the rubrics should be shared with the students before assignment. Yes, of course. They have to be shared with the students before you give out the assignment. Only then it is fair to assess them on those or against those rubrics. Anyone else who has a question?
Dr. Mevish, thank you so much. This was really great. And thank you, Dr. Rukhsana and Mr. Suleiman. This was really, doing the breakout rooms has now made me feel that I can try it because I know what it looks like and how it works. So thank you for that. I'm just wondering, there's so many resources that we can try. This Padlet thing, there's so many that I sometimes don't know where I could start. Would you suggest maybe one or two of these kinds of things that are a good starting place, that are kind of user-friendly, that don't require, I don't know, coding or any of these kind of, something that might be a good starting place?
What for? What is your intention?
so kind of working with students in groups. One of the things I noticed about Padlet is that it seems that it's kind of open to the world. So I could change someone else's group's link if I wanted to, or go in because it's a shared document. I'm wondering about kind of resources that can be used with students that I don't have to worry too much about if one student kind of wants to mess things up, or I don't know. I feel like there's so many of these resources for sharing documents, and I'm just wondering, kind of
Elizabeth,
secure ways.
Have you tried to use blogs?
I have not.
I think then a good starting point for you is to explore Blogspot. And
Okay.
it's very easy. It's very easy. You can actually, I'm sure you're gonna like playing around it, and just try to use it, integrate it within your coursework. You can upload documents. It can be a portal for holding a lot of documents for you. Students wouldn't have the rights to change anything because you're the author of the blog.
Okay.
But they do have the option of posting a comment.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so Blogspot is the site?
Yeah, explore it.
Okay.
And
Okay, I
see
will.
how
Thank you.
does it work for you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I was just wondering if maybe you could provide a list of all these resources, and because we do have some time at the moment for the next fall semester. In the meantime, we can probably test them, try them, learn them. If we can probably get a list of all those resources that can be used in online teaching.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shweb. I think Roxana and her team have already collated many resources. And Roxana, if you could direct the participants to your resource bank. And along with that, if you specifically want to have access to the presentation and the resources that I talked about within the presentation. So this presentation, I'm going to send it to Suleiman and Roxana. It will be uploaded. And Roxana, I think everyone can view it later on as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there you go. There you have the access to the links.
Yeah, I think if you didn't join early, we did show a worksheet, and on that worksheet we had put up links for free web-based technologies by different categories of tasks that you might want to do. And it was a huge document, and I weeded out the ones that are really easy and that are more familiar in our own context. Like Mavish said, lots of things work better in our context and you're more familiar, and they are easy to use. So we will be sending you that worksheet. Actually has been shared by most of you who joined the course designing section. But after these webinars are over, along with the webinars, we'll be putting up a huge resource bank of resources developed by CLT, and of course developed by our experts, which we will incorporate with due reference to them. We already have a couple of documents from Mavish, from Sumera, from a few others who have shared it with us, and we have them on the site. But of course, we'll try to send you a separate document for the web-based technologies that you ask for.
Dr. Zia, may I add something?
Yeah, please do.
I think Dr. Saab has a very valid point, because you see, Dr. Elizabeth raised one point, and of course he was talking about the same. I think that we are talking about specific to the tools, the tools that we can use, and tailored made tools. I mean to say that whosoever is coming from, for instance, I'm coming from writing and communication background, so what tools I can incorporate, or for instance, person from environmental sciences, so tailored made and specific to the field. So we can make a list of all those tools.
Here is the web-based learning technologies I was talking about.
It's
and
so
this
generic,
is
I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and can you see it?
Yes, we can.
And these are text-based tools, image-based tools, audio tools, video tools, there are different types of tools, social networking, assessment tools. Please go through them. We have cut out a lot that's unnecessary, and we have limited it to very simple ones that you can repeatedly try and get a hang of it. So please look at it and feel free to tell us if you think something else needs to be added to these.
If you can
We'll be very
add
happy
writing and communication tools as well. So I'll be more than happy if you cater to my field even. Writing and writing specifically, because I could see there are plenty of speaking and all audio visual.
No. Yes, text-based tools
These-
would sort of maybe do that, but of course, I think we need to share a lot. Maida has raised a hand. Please, Maida.
I just have a small comment to what Adil Saab said. See, the thing is with technology, all the technology, whether they are softwares or web apps or mobile apps, they cover all disciplines except a few simulations or few games. So just like Padlet covers all the context, whether it's environmental science, it's English, it's maths, education. It's just how the instructor is designing the course or designing a task and how that technology will be integrated or used in that session or in that classroom. So there are very few tools which will be directed towards a specific subject, but all the other tools cover each and everything which you're going to teach in your classroom, basically. So it will be you who decide how to use a tool, not the other way around.
Maida, we know we have some experts, technology experts. So you are the instructional technologist I always wanted around me. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions? And Adil, if you're not satisfied, please keep coming back and push us. And we will try to locate something for you. Happy to do that. Please do. I love the way you prod us. Ji, please.
I would thank you, Maida, for picking this up and reinforcing what she said. Today's webinar also covered assessment from 2 points of views. One is the way you integrate technology in it, and the other is the content part. So what you're saying, Adil, any kind of content, this comes from the instructor. The role of the technology is only to facilitate you and to provide you that platform to communicate it to the students, or to basically enable students to communicate their learning product with you, while giving you some benefits of functionality within within a distance modality of learning. So basically, it all boils down to the content. And for selection of the content, we talked about different things that the instructors need to, be mindful of. And this sequence or this process, this mental process goes on. Technology is a very small part or a very small element of all of this. It is just the tool that we use as for assessment or for instructional delivery.
I think a very good clarification. We forget that it is the instructor, not the technology, that drives the agenda in the classroom. And I think that has to be kept forward and center in your mind. It is you that matters, and what you're comfortable with, and what sports, what you're trying to do. Perfect. Thank you, Maida. I wish very well said. Thank you. Any other questions?
Sylvia has a question.
Hey, can I say something? Yeah. It's more a comment.
Please.
Like Elizabeth was saying, that at this point, and we are given the extended list of resources that at this point is more of a Russian salad, that we don't know exactly what to pick, and we can't learn all the technologies, all the resources at the same time. So I think at this time, based on what we have to teach and the strategies that we have that we want to do or to have in the particular courses, select a strict set of tools and use that. Like, for me, and at least last semester, that everything had to be at the same time. Within 2 weeks, we had to put everything and completely change our strategy of teaching and try to learn everything, all the softwares, and we went mad with it. At least I did. So I guess we have to create, okay, there's a lot of resources that we can use, but I do not have time to look at all of these. These fit my strategy, and these are what I will use. So Moodle is there. It's the easiest way to go for us. We have the support of the IT and FC. So that's clear for me. I'm not using any other software platform, at least, to communicate for my teaching. Regarding other softwares that will help or that can integrate with Moodle, can help with the communication or some particular assignments, Zoom is very good. I actually end up paying for Zoom, so I can use for more than 40 minutes, and I don't have to keep on sending the link over and over again. But I had to strict myself to that. This is the tools that I will be using. Otherwise, I will go mental, more than normal.
Yeah, I think, Sylvia, you're right. Mavish will agree that as instructors, you do not have to, you're not forced to use more than what you're comfortable with. And I think the best thing is that you should be comfortable with what you're doing, and that is more important. G. Mavish.
I think at all times during your teaching, this idea should work as a force of gravity for you. That what do you want the students to learn? That is it. You know, the coin has to drop. And if it drops only by using Moodle, good enough. You're actually achieving what you want to do. The idea is not to enter a technology show-off parade where you're telling people that, oh, see, I'm using so much. It's not like that. You see, it is, and nowadays when everybody is trying out different forms of technology, sometimes when we are talking about it, we really feel overwhelmed by the way people talk, and they flaunt about how well they are at using different kind of softwares and applications and how much they know about it. But it's okay. Do not get influenced. Do not get overwhelmed by this, because it's just, I would relate it to something similar to this, summer lawn frenzy in Pakistan, which you must have, experienced. All sorts of clothing lines introducing their lines, and then people going haywire, mad to buy it. But it's not needed. As long as you just achieve what you had promised yourself, what you had perceived for your students, the main learning goals, they have to be achieved and realized. That is it.
Absolutely. I do not see any more questions. Are there any more?
May I add something, Dr. Oksana?
Please.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Mavish, for so beautifully explaining everything, and everything made sense. My question, comment on technology would be that whatever we have decided that this is working, at the end of the day, we have to see that whether it is working for the students or not. So maybe, this is what I am keeping in my mind for fall semester, that I have to keep my options open. All right, I have decided to work through Moodle, but for some students, even Moodle did not work in spring semester. So there might be some individual areas which come to us, come into our knowledge after we are in the course itself. And then we realize, all right, now we have to make certain changes. So I think we should be mentally prepared for those aspects as well. And then to have something as plan B, or maybe even as plan C. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think great idea. Thank you, Memuna. Just to say that I attended a workshop, a very international workshop on web-based technologies for teaching. And the question I put to the experts at that time, and that was like 3 years ago, was, you're telling me that this technology is good, but can you give me an overview of what are the best technologies for what? Now I'm coming back to only that question of best technology for what, like Adil said. And the answer was, you have to try it before you can say what is best for you. So, but this typology that I'm talking about and the document that I have weeded for our own convenience is actually made by EDUCAUSE community, and it has a whole listing of all the web-based technologies, free web-based technologies that can be used for teaching. And so if you go to the mainframe, it is like 20-30 pages of document which I've collapsed to make some into very few necessary ones that I thought were easy to for our palate over here in Pakistan. But please, I'm going to send you the link. Do try. It's about what works for you and what is the purpose that you want to use it. And Memuna made a good point. What works for your students? If it doesn't work for them, is it going anywhere? No. So you will have to see if your students are comfortable with it or not. So that's a great point, Memuna. Thank you so much. We see that we don't have any other comments or queries coming, and you don't want to open up your videos so that we can see each other. That's okay too. But it's lovely to see your names. And Mavish, thank you so much. It's always a delight. Your PowerPoints are so impressive. I think one of these days, I'm going to ask you to run a PowerPoint demonstration, how to make great PowerPoints.
Thank you so much.
So, and I might just call you out on that, how to make those beautiful PowerPoints that you do. So, thank you, everybody.
Download the format.
Jaleel. Ji?
I just simply download the format for free from the internet and then replace the content. That is all.
Great. That's all. As simple. So maybe you need to list that in our document, that free web-based technologies for PowerPoint. We'll add that over there, which is the free thing. And Jaleel, nice to see you. Sylvia, nice to see you. I don't know who else is there, opens up so that we can sort of at least socialize with each other. So great day to all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us for this much time. Rana Salman, I have not ever had a comment from you. Why not say something?
Assalamu alaikum, madam.
Kya haal hai? How are you, Rana? I haven't heard you speak. So what's up? Any comments?
नहीं, आज का सेशन बहुत अच्छा था, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ. आप सुनाएं. आज का सेशन बहुत अच्छा रहा. मैंने जो ब्रेकअप रूम्स थे उसमें काफी अच्छी लर्निंग हुई और एक किस्म की वर्कशॉप वाला एनवायरनमेंट हो गया या एक किस्म की एक्सरसाइज भी हो गई साथ में, तो अच्छा लगा.
I totally agree. This was my first time too with the breakout room, and I'm like feeling adventurous that I'm going to go, and we are trying it more often in our sessions that we do. But let's hope that we do not have to stick to this mode, and that we can really truly meet and see each other when times are better. It's been getting to be a bit difficult to work on this mode. But great to see you all, and thank you, Mavish. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a nice
good
day.
evening. Yes. Khuda Hafiz.
Okay. Bye-bye.